Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. We really are excited about hearing from you. A lot of people know that April is World Autism Month, and I know I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak through Easterseals of Arkansas. But in case someone that's watching this hasn't heard you speak before, can you give us like a little background history on yourself?
Yes. So I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at age 20. So later in life, all the signs were there ahead of time, but nobody knew what to make of me. But unfortunately, when I got my diagnosis, my doctor, I mean, it's 2003, Autism Awareness, Understanding, Acceptance didn't exist compared to today. So my doctor didn't know what it was. So he told me, good luck. So I had to look it up on the internet, and I'd never heard of Asperger's myself. So first thing I read stated that people with Asperger's will never have a job, will never have friends, will never be happy. Horrible introduction. And
Oh, wow.
unfortunately, I believed those words and became extremely depressed. But 15 months later, I sat down on my computer and I started to write. I never intended on writing a book. I never intended on anyone really reading it. It was primarily just for my parents to explain who I was and why I was. And I wrote a book by accident. I had no intentions of ending up writing a book. And after the book was published, place asked me if I wanted to give a presentation, and one presentation turned into five. And since 2009, I've given about 1,050 presentations to almost 100,000 people spoken to, but all the while heavily involved in motorsports. And that's one of the unfortunate things about when I got my diagnosis. When I let that diagnosis define me, I forgot who I was. At the time, I was the flagger for the St. Louis Karting Association, but I stayed in motorsports all the while since 2003, and in 2020 became one of the starters or flagmen for the NTT IndyCar series. So flagging at the top level of American motorsports is an extreme rush, and I still can't believe that I got the opportunity. But that goes back to that website that never have a job. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth.
So, Aaron, in April, like I said earlier, we celebrate World Autism Month. And those watching, they may have heard of autism awareness in the past. Maybe they've heard of autism acceptance. There's kind of been a shift in the last decade, transitioning to what it's called. Do you have any thoughts or preferences on that?
Yeah, we needed awareness 20 years ago. My story, look at the doctor, he was unaware of it, which led to cataclysmic results with me looking up online because I didn't know what it was. Very few people knew what it was. First person I told that I had Asperger's, they looked at me and they said, wait, did you say you ate a hamburger? They didn't know the name of it. The trend this year has been autism acceptance. Myself, I take things literally, so I don't know. I've been struggling with what are we accepting, because if I would have accepted my fate or my misguided flawed logic fate when I read that website, was I supposed to accept what was going to happen? I struggle with that just from my introduction. So my personal message is autism understanding. What does it mean to be on the spectrum? What do those around us, I believe if understanding is a foundation for hope. That's been my motto since I began speaking. If I'm aware of myself and those around me are understanding, or if I understand myself and those around me understand, it's going to be much better for all parties. And I think growth in each individual is just going to go so much further. So I personally like the term understanding more, but there's still some areas in the country and the world that need the awareness aspect that it does exist. But I like to see that shift more towards the understanding aspect.
I like that. I haven't heard the understanding component before. Kind of along the same lines, when I was going to school to be a teacher, the big emphasis was on using person first language And so if you're talking about someone, you're calling them this is Bob, he has autism, instead of saying he's autistic. But lately, it seems there's been a shift, and some people prefer that's part of their identity, and they prefer to use that in their introduction. Do you have any cool thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I had arguments with people a decade ago when this was happening, and it was really weird for some individuals to tell me how I should be called. Shouldn't it be just person's choice language? I mean, some people would want to be a person with autism, another person. A lot of my friends on Facebook that are advocates say, "No, I'm autistic. That's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It isn't a put down. It isn't slander. It is. That's who they are. Just describe them like that." Uh, I got into an argument 10 years ago. For me, if you're changing the natural flow of your language, because our language is based on using the descriptor like X person is autistic, not a person with autism. If you're changing your language so much, you must think what I have is really, really bad.
Hmm.
If you are altering the natural flow of language, then what I have must be so awful in your mind that you have to dance around it. That it again, that goes back to the whole literal standpoint of those. I understand people that do use that type of language, that they aren't thinking that it's that bad. They're trying to be polite, but for myself, it disrupts the natural flow. So shouldn't it just be person's choice instead of a blanket statement that all people need to conform to the same? Each person's going to have a uh, different preference on how it's referred to.
Absolutely. That's kind of what we came to a consensus on with my group, is that, like, ask the person, ask them what their preference is and find out. And then, you don't have to worry about offending someone or saying the right thing. Just have a conversation.
Absolutely. And if you've met, the most important thing anybody can know about autism is if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And perhaps that slipped in the awareness aspect, that we still need to, make people aware of that fact.
Mhm.
Don't put everyone into the same box. We're all unique. We'll all have different strengths, different weaknesses. Some will be social, some will not be. But we're all different, so don't do a blanket statement on what all of us want to be called.
So I have kind of one more question for you, just kind of to wrap up. So if you had a magic wand and you could choose one thing for people to take away from World Autism Month, what would be that thing?
The one thing, um, the one takeaway I think that the world should have on World Autism Month is that autism doesn't end at the end of April. It's a everyday thing for us on the spectrum. Myself, just this past Sunday, working the race in Long Beach. At the end of the day, there was a group of security people that were happy that the day was over. They were almost like a flash mob. And my coworker, I was on a golf cart. We drove by, and the flash mob of security people quit dancing and singing as we got near. And my coworker just said, "What? You're stopping the party on my account?" And he got out and started dancing with them for about 10, 15 seconds. It was really magical. But myself, I'm sitting there absolutely frozen. I had no idea what was going on. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't partake in spontaneous, um, jovial, that I couldn't do it. Even if I tried, even if I did my whole might. Now, is that a major thing in a person's life? No, but when that happens every day, when a social situation can be confusing, when you take that type of situation and think about what goes on in the classroom, where every single day a person on the spectrum may see random social encounters like that and not be able to partake in it. And when they are thrust into a social situation, they may struggle, they may not know what to do, they may just not be able to communicate whatsoever in those situations. If you don't have the understanding of those around that person, we're going to seem aloof, standoffish, like we're almost trying to be rude, that we're not socializing, when for some of us in those situations, we quite simply can't. So the one takeaway is how great my coworker is. He understood what was going on, and he didn't go, Aaron, why didn't you join in? Why didn't you? Why didn't you? There was none of that language of why didn't you. He understood that that's not my thing. He's okay with it. He understands it. We continued the day and everything was fine. So that understanding outside the month of April is what I hope people take away. And if the world just understands us just a couple percent more, those situations, I will come away with leaving that situation not just dreading that, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? It's, wait, what I can do is pretty awesome. Everyone has their strengths. Everyone, autism or spectrum or not, most certainly have their weaknesses. And who I am is pretty great. And if those around me understand that, you know, that's okay. So I hope the takeaway is just try to understand us, try to be a support for us, and our growth and our contributions in society are just going to grow through that understanding.